All right, so the other day, me and Chip were like messaging each other back and forth, and we started talking about Adam's family, Adam's family values, right?
Yeah.
I always bring up like random parts of the movie. Suge had the same thing. He started like the whole Debbie thing.
Nah, Debbie is a part in the movie, and I always, for one, like first of all, like I always thought of it like, obviously me being like perpetually single. I was like, I imagine finally like, or me dating like a really like hot, hot chick or whatever, right? So it's a part where Fester, if you guys don't know the plot of the movie, this is Adam's Family Values, which is the second Adam's Family movie. It came out in 1993, directed by Barry Sonnenfeld, who also did Men in Black, the whole Men in Black series. Yeah, so in a film, like the Adams family, like basically they're like old money. So even though they're like, weird and like gothic and like creepy and stuff like that, like they obviously make like all they're a rich family regardless. So they're wealthy, so they pop up in like Forbes and Fortune and all of those different like magazines. I mean, even if you, and this is what we're gonna discuss, like it's based on a '60s TV show. If you recall, in the '60s TV show with John Aston as Gomez, they he always used to have like the stock market ticker. So it just shows you how much like wealth they had. Like even though they have all these eccentricities, like they were of money. So there's this character, Debbie, who comes in and she's like the nanny to their new baby, which was actually like an original creation for that movie. Um and basically she does all of these things to get to Festa because Festa is like the most eligible like bachelor, and she knows she can marry him and like take his money and kill him and take his money. So the point of the movie was that like she basically fails in killing him because like he's like kind of like a supernatural person, like he could make light bulbs. He put a light bulb in his mouth like and it lights up. Like that's something also from the older TV series. So on she planned to kill him on a honeymoon, but he wouldn't by like throwing. He was taking a bath and she threw like a radio into it to like electrocute him to death. And all it did was just it kept him alive. So she ended up having to stay married to him and figure out ways to kill him. So there's a part where they come back and like they're moving into the new house, and like she makes him like wear a wig. I mean, not a wig, like a toupee. Um, and makes him dress in like pastels and stuff like that to kind of make him look normal since she's got to remain married to him until she kills him. So it's like an offhand like part in the movie where she's like, he says to her, he's like, he's played by Christopher Lloyd and Debbie's played by Ann Cusack. No, not Ann Cusack, Joan
Glenn,
Cusack.
Joan, yeah, right.
Yeah, who's John Cusack's sister, and she pops up in a lot of like John Cusack films. They also have a sister named Ann Cusack that she's an actress too. But he says to her, he's like, "Give me a kiss," and then she's like, "Give me a 20," and then he starts like patting his looking for his wallet. So I was like, that'd be me and my wife. I'm like, give me a
Oh yeah,
ki-
yeah.
give
Like you
me a
said,
kid.
I would always say Debbie. For some reason, I would always say Debbie for some reason. And then there's another part where the Pugsley is like Amy Fisher. Didn't that makes no sense? Just the way they talk. I guess that was like the style of the movie. But like it's very like off camera like vocals. It's like really weird. Like that. It just stuck with me all the time. But yeah, those are really weird movies. It's like Old World. They
Yeah.
have money, but they have old world money,
Hmm.
and it's very very freak show, French, Parisian. That's why he couldn't get killed because like the freak shows back then, like guy could get rich, could do like the whatever. He can die. Yeah, so like old world money. You were saying like like bonds and stuff. Um, it very like reminded me of like Freak Show. That's what he couldn't be Fat Uncle Fat couldn't be killed or whatever because he was like a weird freak show in like Paris in like the 20s or 30s or 20th century Victorian.
The reason why I think of it with Trump and Melania is like I imagine like that scene like give me a kiss. All right, give me a 20. Like I think that's like probably how they are like behind closed doors. Like, like I've never seen them ever like be affectionate to each other in public, like in not even just from the presidency, but like in all the like time they've been together.
Adam's family, like they were supposed to be from another world, another time, and they
Mm-hmm.
were living in the 90s, especially with like the part two. And that was the same thing with a lot of the other movies that we're going to talk about that were inspired or straight up um, new versions of 60s sitcoms, late 50s to like early 70s. Also,
Mm-hmm.
like campy is the word. But I was thinking because me and us three, that's like the first thing we saw. I know a lot, like Nick at Night had a lot of these shows, and I grew up. I would stay up all night and like watch like Nick at Night. So I knew like the Addams Family from back then. But a lot of people growing up, this is like the only version of this thing they saw. But the whole
Mm-hmm.
point of these movies were kind of like a tongue in cheek thing, where it's like Gen Xers, which is like the generation like above us.
Mm-hmm.
They were all about like self rent. Tarantino was like a self referencing like things that happened before, and
Yeah.
like another thing we talked about was it came to mind was the Brady Bunch. The Brady Bunch movie is a very weird movie. It's a bright and sunny version of Adam's Family because there's are they supposed to be from the '60s and they're living in like a the '90s? Like did that you saw that movie like when it came out, right?
Yeah, because that was one of the movies I was gonna bring it. Like it was like basically like they were like the kids were like the same age as kids their age, but for whatever reason, like their family was stuck in like that time period, like personality wise, and that clash with the outside world. So that's something too I wanted to bring up. So like with these shows, right? Because we always talk about like the unoriginality of Hollywood these days. Like, you have to make movies about comic books. You have to make movies, a whole bunch of like you have to remake old movies. Like, there's no originality. So there's always like this theme. Like I
Source
remember,
material.
yeah. So I remember like in the like late 2000s, like they would have like a whole bunch of movies that like you know, would come out like months apart, but they basically be like the same movie. Like they had a movie called Friends with Benefits, and then they had a movie called No Strings Attached, and they both came out
Mm,
like in like 2008, 2009, and they basically were like the same movie.
yeah.
So like the thread in the 90s was like a lot of these movies would be remakes of the old shows. And what they do is sometimes they'll update them, but just it'd be set in a current time, like Flipper, um what's another movie that was like that?
Yeah, well, I broke it down actually. I actually broke it down, and then
Uh-huh.
when we were full disclosure, when we were setting up for this episode, I mean the this segment, I thought of Lassie. Another one was Lassie,
Hmm.
um, and then I just remembered another one that it slipped my mind. But oh, the Munsters. They made Munster movies too, like on TV,
Yeah,
which is
yeah,
like but isn't that weird? And then they were supposed to be from back then, but in modern times, which is like the funny part of it. But yeah, we'll jump back into it, but I broke it down where like Lassie is like a grittier version of Lassie. Everyone's seen Lassie, like Lassie, come home, that whole thing. But
yeah.
this
Hmm.
was like a loner kid. It was a kid from Sandlot,
Yeah.
my movie, like that. But he's like, oh, I gotta move to the country. And he's from like Seattle or he's from like New York. His skateboard and shit, like. And then he was like, he grows to love the country. That's like the whole point of that. So
Yeah.
that's like a grittier version of
And
that,
Flipper
Even
was like
though
kind of like the same thing. Like they updated it and they had like Crocodile Dundee, like and Elijah Wood was like a kid. He like in the same thing. He grew up in the city and then he got sent to live with his uncle who was Paul Hogan, Crocodile Dundee, and befriended a dolphin based on a thing. But like I said, like some of the shows they would set them in like the current day, or it would be something where they'd be basically the same way they were in the 60s but in the 90s, and I was like Adam's Family and Brady Bunch, and kind of play up the differences and just make it seem like they're weird compared to everybody else. And the funny thing about it is with Adam's Family, right? So the original show was always black and white. So when they did like the house and like the appearances of the Adams Family, like they kind of look like they use muted colors like gray and black and white. But if you
Mm.
ever saw like a colorized picture of the house or the set from the 1960s show, it was like booming with color. Like it had color, like everything was like red and bright and stuff like that. But the black and white is what made it look so muted and so like gothic.
Mm.
And they played that up in the movie.
Yeah, I mean, and if you go back to the '60s, everything was trying to be all what's the word, like color tonic. I've heard the phrase, but like the very bright colors because color TV was coming in.
Hmm.
So like the Adams Family and like the Monsters was purposely like that the contrast with all the other shows. Like Brady Bunch is very bright too, and then the Batman series was like the biggest colorful show ever because they did it on purpose. So back then they were trying to clash with current society, and then in the '90s they were clashing with like, oh, Adam's Family, they're actually the normal ones. Actually, these people are weird, but the '90s people are
Yeah.
weird. That's what I always got, like the yuppies and stuff in part two, which is
And remember, like, and you brought up like Batman. Remember when we did like the Bruce Wayne, um,
drip.
yeah, when we did the Bruce Wayne drip episode, I said like the Joe Schumacher movies, if you think about them as like 90s remakes of like the 60s TV show, like they don't seem as bad because they kind of had the same like campiness and the same like bright colors and stuff like that. And like the comedy, the comedic relief and stuff like that. So that you could also categorize Batman and Robin and Batman Forever as like remakes of 60s TV shows.
Yeah, there was a famous clip. I mean, famous clip. I know he passed away this summer, which is tribute to Joel Schumacher again. We talked about it then, but it's a funny clip. I love what he says. It's on the DVD bonus features, or
Right.
maybe it was Wolf Boys, but he's like, they were shitting on me for Batman Forever and Batman and Robin. He's like, it's a movie, it's a TV show, 60s TV show. It's Batman, it's a comic book. Like, get over yourself. That's why
Yeah.
I was like, all right. Then after that, I was like, all right, those movies are supposed to be silly. All right, let's. Yeah, no, people get the fanboys get too crazy about it.
Yeah, because it's funny
Another
because
thing,
like I like when I was a kid I liked it, and then when I got older and then you saw like the Nolan Batman movies, like I started to like dislike it because I thought it was like, oh, these are corny. These don't make sense. Like when you look at Batman and Batman Returns, and then you look at the Nolan movies, and then the Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, like they stick out like a sore thumb. And then as I got older, I think about it, I'm like, perhaps if you think of these as remakes of the Adam West Batman series, like you could see them in a more positive light, and that's why like when I watch them now, I really like enjoy them.
yeah, and we talked about like the contrasts in these movies coming from like the when they were originally created and then when they brought them back out in the '90s, how it clashed. Like new audiences, like we're the new audience, but we liked it on the surface, and there was like deeper meanings. The other thing that came to mind was they were banking on franchises, and the earliest version of that, like where like you get like a $200 million budget just in like marketing, was like Dick Tracy and Ghostbusters and Batman, the original Batman,
Hmm.
and then that was like more like my brother, but me for some reason, movie never came out yet. It was like months before, but there was a home video of me getting so hyped over Flintstones. I was like buying
Mm.
the toys, and I was like, I got Fred Flintstone. I got Fred. I'm like, it was kind of like, and it was like a $500 million budget back then, and they were banking on the Flintstones. It was crazy. I can't imagine that like now it's comic books and all that, but I just find that weird like going back and then like watching the movie. It's like really weird. It's like that it's all like based on old source materials, not like a superhero. It's like just a show, and that was a homage to Honeymooners.
Yeah, and like I was gonna bring up Flintstones too, because that whole movie was basically like was just like a stretched out um Flintstones episode. Like I remember, I actually like you like just like you did. Like I was like hyped to see it too because I love the Flintstones cartoon, and I actually remember like it's funny because I hadn't remembered it until we just talked. You just talked about your excitement for it. Like me and my mom was taking me to see it like afternoon um showing of it, and like I'd already been dressed. I was like 4 or 5 years old. So either like she dressed me or I got dressed or whatever. And I was ready and like she was getting ready. So I went outside and like I locked myself outside. I locked myself out of the house. So I had to go downstairs and try to like figure out a way back in, and I was like panicking and crying, and then we eventually got to the movie and I like enjoyed it, but I totally forgot that story of me at like 4 years old getting locked out because I was gonna sit outside and wait.
Yeah, I'm a year older. I'm a, I'm gonna show this clip of me. I was the smuggest 5 year old when I had a party, and it's ironic because like I still know these kids too, growing up, like the neighborhood kids,
Hmm.
and I'm like at the table, and I have the whole spread. I have like Power Rangers, I have like, wrestling stuff a little bit, sort of, and then I have Flintstone stuff, and I'm like, like doing stuff I saw on movies, like cracking my knuckles. I'm like, my gifts and stuff, and everyone's like over, like all around me and stuff. And I
Yeah.
was like holding, what's it called, like a mob thing, where I'm like holding, what do you call that again? Holding court. I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and like Flintstones didn't even come out yet. It was like 2 months before it came out, and we were all like hyped for it. It was great. Um, I think that's fascinating stuff. I don't know, it's like different now, but another one that came out was Dennis the Menace, and that was just straight up a Home Alone cash in. They're trying to do like Home Alone with property. Dennis Menace was a cartoon, and it was a comic strip, and it was also a show. But
Hmm.
that was like 40 years later too, and then they kind of made it kind of like last like darker a little bit because I think that was Walter Matthau made that movie tolerable for older people. You know?
Yeah. And they another like common thread was Christopher Lloyd. He was in that movie too. He was
Hmm.
the bad guy in that one. Um
Creepy, very
and then
creepy. I was
and
freaked
then
out.
Dennis the Menace was based on like a comic strip and like a TV show, and like another two movies that were based on comic books from yesteryear during that time was Casper the Friendly Ghost
Oh,
and Richie
Jesus,
Rich.
another one,
Richie Rich.
another one. It was Richie Rich. Oh my God, I forgot about that too.
And the thing about Richie Rich is like it always gave me like the wealth I aspire to get. In the one scene, I tweeted it. I don't know if you saw it, Mike, and I was just like, yo, that one scene when he shows his friends that he has a McDonald's in his house. I was like, yo, I want to be that rich, like to have
Stop
my own
it.
McDonald's. Yeah, and then
Look at you owning this, man. We're not bringing them in. Oh, is
and
he
then
there now?
huh?
Do well. These movies that we're rambling about back then,
Yeah,
and were you watching back then?
like the only thing that comes to mind to me, I don't know, like I'm going off the rim with it, but like Beetlejuice, because it's similar to Adam's Family to me. Beetlejuice is one of them that comes to mind. Like
Yeah,
I don't know if like
I mean,
that
that's
was a
not
good
based on
homage.
yeah,
I
not.
like
like Tim Boomish, which is very
yeah, that's
much
the
like
thing. I
old
didn't know if
Tim.
it was based off like because I know it
But it's good you brought it up because, like, perhaps like Beetlejuice and a lot of those Tim Burton movies probably served as like inspiration for Adam's Family, because you could probably look at Beetlejuice and be like,
yeah
and like Batman and Batman and Batman Returns, like you could look at those and be like, oh, like maybe we could make like the Adams, um, we could make Adams Family now. Like you could make that into a movie. Like so yeah, like Beetlejuice could have served for the
Yeah,
inspiration for that.
I can. I was going to think about. I was going to bring this up. I was thinking of a way to. So in the '80s, they did a similar thing with these series properties in the '60s and the '50s. They brought them back as like the new version, the new, and like they did it, the new Honeymooners, and they did the new Odd Couple. They did all these shows that were from back then. Um, but I also mentioned Gen Xers. I'm not sure. I guess he's a Gen Xer, but Tim Burton, maybe a baby boomer. But he did Pee Wee Herman with Pee Wee Herman, and that was so that was a reference, meta thing that led to Beetlejuice, that led to Batman, and then that led to people going back, just trying to make a moneymaker from an old property that was a hit in the '60s, which is like fascinating to me still. It's like, could you imagine now them making a show or a movie based on like these movies from the '90s? Because that's how long ago it was. It's like weird.
Like shows from the 90s, yeah, definitely. Like I mean, like the only thing is like they'd make them because you're already seeing it now. Like look at Riverdale, look at Teen Wolf, like all of these stuff. Like
Oh, and they made
what
Sabrina.
Sabrina with the one with Sally Draper, and all they basically do is just take those properties and make them like darker. So like they can make like a Saved by the Bell. Like I think they are already. Like they're making a Saved by the Bell and they're making it like more like
Yeah, it got
2020 ish.
shelved.
Yeah,
Not shelved. Yeah, it got postponed because of COVID, obviously.
yeah.
But Zach is back. He's
And
gonna
then
show up.
the funny thing with about Casper too, also because I don't know if I said it on this show. Did I? Maybe I did about Christina Ricci.
Oh my
You
God, we
know,
all know this.
you
We
know
all know
Christina Ricci is
who
like my first crush. So like
you are.
she was in Adam's Family, the two movies, and then she was in Casper. And it was funny because well, the reason why I saw Adam's Family, and it's one of the reasons I look forward to October. You know, the 31 Days of Halloween on it used to be Family Channel, now it's Freeform.
Freeform. Freeform, yeah.
So everybody gets all like hyped about like freaking Hocus Pocus. Like, and I like Hocus Pocus, ain't nothing wrong with that. But I always get hyped because like Adam's Family and Adam's Family values more. Adam's Family values more because the first Adam's Family, me and Mike were discussing that it was like a lot more dark and it had a lot. It was more like a dark comedy, whereas like the second movie, Adam's Family Values, was more of like a regular old like comedy movie. But I was thinking, I was watching Casper the other day, and it was just funny to me when like the part where he turns into like a real boy, and he's played by
Yeah.
what's my boy name,
All the
man?
girls. Apparently,
From
all the girls
from
loved him. Little Giants.
Devin Sawa. That's his name.
Idle Hands. Idle Hands. What the fuck it's called?
Yeah,
Oh,
Devin Sawa. You know, like he was the dude. Like he was in Little Giants. He was in Casper in that one part. He was in the other movie too. Now and then. Remember that movie with Christina Ricci
yeah.
and Rosie O'Donnell and all that? Yeah, yeah. So he was in that movie, and then he eventually when he was older, he was in the first Final Destination. But
He's Stan.
yeah, like you know, just like that's the dude, man. Shout out to Devin Sawa if you're watching this, man. You was that guy. Um,
You're shocking me right now because Stan was at my first makeout party when I was like in sixth grade. They were playing it on TV, and it was the video for Stan. Now and then, I was like
oh yeah,
little, like
yeah, he was in a stand video too. Yeah,
blooming noticing of girls in school. Um, Little Giants was like that too. It's funny that he was like kind of in all those movies.
and then but the thing I was thinking about when I was watching Casper, right? So the whole movie, he's like Casper the friendly ghost, like oh, all like wholesome and stuff like that, and then he turns into a real boy. And then he just turns into like this like Lothario. He turns into like this he says to her when they're dancing, he was like, "Can I keep you?" I was just like, Yo, he just turned from Casper the friendly ghost into Casper the dirty Mac.
But isn't he also dressed like he's from like the Victorian age? Like he's like
What?
125 years old.
No, well, it was a costume party because remember it was like a Halloween.
Oh, okay. Maybe I'm just misremembering. Okay.
And you know the funny thing, like the house. Remember they used that same house for the everybody.
Really?
Yeah, it's the same house.
Oh
They got
yeah.
the
I
little
think you're doing
spiral on the
different song.
floor. Yeah, it's
That's
crazy.
cool. But Dan Aykroyd's in it too. Ghostbusters. The
Yeah, he
only
did his Ghostbusters cameo.
well, I was hyped about that because I was a nostalgic kid before things were nostalgic, which is another thing we're gonna bring up because we love talking about these. This may seem like esoteric to a lot of our followers who are gonna watch, but we love this thing called I Love the '80s. Right, we were talking about that as well, and it was like them talking
Yeah,
about things they grew up on, but we're talking about things we grew up on. It's kind of like a new version of it, where um, it's just fun to talk about it now, like in our minds now, and then how we were thinking back then. You know.
yeah, and I love like these little segments that we have where we talk about like nostalgia and stuff like that. There you go. I had that same video too.
So this is probably a year after I was hyped because I probably got this for like, because back then VHS came out like a year later. The HBO would have it like a year later, and this is probably '94. Yeah, so the movie came out in like '93. I think. No, it came out in '94.
You know,
Yeah,
it's, you
so
know what's funny to me? Like I realized like I don't know if I realized it when I was a kid or I realized it when I was older. Most likely was when I was older. Like Betty Rubble was supposed to be like a hottie. So like
so
and they picked Rosie O'Donnell. No offense to Rosie O'Donnell. Like, listen, Rosie O'Donnell has fucked more bitches than all three of us combined, probably.
Jesus.
So, so I don't think she'll be offended by this. But like like the casting for it, like, damn, they could have had like Demi Moore or like I'm trying to think of, like another like brunette, like Gina
It's funny
Davis or
because
something. Yeah, like
they had Liza, not Liza, Elizabeth Taylor, which is like an icon. You know, we all know her from Cleopatra and everything. But Addams Family, they had huge marketing behind it, and I actually was in theaters, and they had a thing with Wayne's World where the Wayne's World were on the set, and they're like, wow, and they're like they're doing Gen X stuff, and they're like Addams Family, pretty cool that they're bringing back the '60s show, like they're like everyone knows Wayne's World is all about like references and stuff.
yeah.
And I remember watching him like, wow, he's like, stay tuned for our movies. I just thought it was cool, and I was like, that I remember that. They also had MC Hammer.
And they had like the whoop
MC Hammer
whoop.
was a big deal.
Yeah, like a whoop. There it is.